Hey guys, we're the Screen Team. We are midway through this show, and we are getting ready to review a definite classic, definitely a movie of one of the best movies of all time, I would say, and one of Mark Sanders' all-time favorite films. We're talking about the Steven Spielberg flick, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And Mark, this one definitely touched you as a young child, right?
Yeah, I was maybe 9 or 10 years old the year that it came out, and this movie really was my entrance into a deep and long-lasting love with science fiction and with movies itself. It was the first movie that really struck me in terms of its greatness, and I embraced every aspect of the movie. I had posters, I had magazines. I played the little 5-note sequence whenever I could get my hands on a piano. I mean, there was everything about this movie I found fascinating. It established my relationship as a film fan with Steven Spielberg. From that point on, if I saw his name on anything, it's like, oh, he directed Close Encounters. This is amazing.
So let me ask you, during dinner time, did you make like mounds of mashed potato?
Every time my mom served mashed potatoes, I would make a little devil's tower and go, this means something.
So what was it about this film that really just enthralled you? Because we were talking off mic. A lot of kids got into Star Wars during the mid to late 70s and stuff like that. What was it about this particular science fiction film that really touched you?
Even as a child, I really liked how intelligent the movie was. I mean, the movie requires you to think as you go along. And it's all very exciting, but it's all completely plausible. A lot of times you see sci-fi movies, and you have to dispense with a lot of believability issues. This actually seemed like something that could happen.
Sure. Let's talk about Richard Dreyfuss' character. He's one of the main characters in this film. He is a line worker for a small town in Indiana. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
And he has a close encounter with a being, and I love this scene. It's just typical Steven Spielberg, where he sets up the first encounter between these two entities, and he does it in such a way that is clever, it's innovative, and it doesn't give everything away right away.
Exactly. And Dreyfuss's character, Roy Neary, is so interesting because he has so many unlikable qualities about him. His obsession with finding the answers behind these encounters with these unexplained objects causes his wife to leave him, take his kids away from him, and then at the end, he not only abandons his family, he abandons his planet, his entire species. I mean, it's a single-minded determination to embrace this otherworldly contact. And part of that, I think, is appealing in that we're all searching for meaning in our lives. But part of it is also, again, causes you to step back and think, and is there anything in my life that would cause me to leave everything behind in pursuit of that in the way that he does?
And that's a great point there. We also have, and I forget the lady's name.
Melinda Dillon.
Melinda Dillon. She was in The Christmas Story.
Yeah.
She plays the mom of Barry, correct?
Right.
And I've never really, until just recently, I've never really watched Close Encounters in its entirety. I've always seen pieces. Like when my dad would have it on, I would watch pieces of it. But for some reason, I'd always see the scene where the kid gets basically abducted.
Yeah.
And that is such a hard scene to watch. And it's typical Spielberg, and he has like all these Hitchcock influences in there, and it's really, really a scary scene.
Oh, and he builds the tension. It starts just with Barry's toys coming to life and moving around, and then it just escalates. And of course, we can't talk about a Steven Spielberg movie without also mentioning John Williams and the soundtrack, because the score just builds that tension little by little, and you see her desperation and trying to keep him, and then at the end she's left just running out into the field calling his name. And it's an interesting contrast between Dreyfuss and Dillon, because he wants these deep spiritual metaphysical answers, and she just wants her kid back.
Right.
That's the only thing she cares about is getting her son back.
Yeah. I watched that scene and I'm just like, man, I know Spielberg has done horror, with Jaws and a little bit of Poltergeist, but he should really dive in there again because he can do it good.
I know. It would be interesting to see him, make a full out terrifying, scary movie. I would have to look back through, although he would probably tell you Schindler's List was pretty scary.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
But yeah, something within the horror genre.
Another interesting thing with Spielberg here is that he wrote the screenplay, which he's done a few times in the past, but very rarely does he write his own screenplays.
Yeah, he usually, and I've seen him in interviews, marking the 30th anniversary, where he describes this as one of his most personal movies.
Yeah.
Something that that really was very close to his own heart, and I think that always comes through. I think it's really remarkable that we're living in a time where a filmmaking artist like Steven Spielberg is still active and working and making movies, because he's the type of figure who like Hitchcock and like some of the other greats is going to be watched and talked about and studied for decades, if not hundreds of years.
It's true. The very last scene, let's talk about the final act of the movie, where we have pretty much a full encounter with our alien beings. The scene builds up as a very, very slow act. But because it is, just because it is slow, it's still a very powerful scene. John Williams' music in that scene is powerful. Let's talk about the final scene. Does it still work for you?
Oh, absolutely. I wish I could still get my hands on the original. He went back and added some additional footage, and I'd like to compare the so-called special edition to the original edition. Spielberg himself has said that the special edition was just some additional special effects that they couldn't afford the first time, and it's actually the movie that he would have made the first time around if he could have. Yeah. I'll take him at his word at that. The final scene really just builds those layers of tension. You see the small ships first, and they're all overjoyed. Hey, we've made contact.
Yeah.
And then there's more contact, and then they see the big ship, and then they're doing the music conversation with the big ship. And then, okay, it's over. And then, no. Then it opens up, and then something comes out, and then something else comes out. I mean, it's just every time you think it's over. I mean, as he does, this is perfect for horror movies, because he does 5 or 6 false endings. You think it's over, and he's like, no, there's more, and he keeps upping the ante right to the very end.
So do you think, you love this film, obviously. I enjoyed it as well. It's one of the greatest films of all time. Does it still hold up? Do you think the younger generation who's going to, study this in class, are they still going to find enjoyment out of this movie?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do. The special effects are one of the things that hold up amazingly well. This was one of the first film collaborations that Spielberg did with George Lucas and his newly created Industrial Light and Magic, built with the success of Star Wars. But ILM did all of the special effects, and they have a grittiness and a realism to them, because a lot of them really were practical effects. I mean, it was lights, it was miniatures, it was matte paintings. It really was the old school way of doing things, but they did it so well that I don't think, God forbid, anyone tries to remake this movie, but if they were to try to remake it and update it with CGI, I think that it would come off as cold and distant in a way that this movie is not.
I couldn't agree more, man. I agree 100%. The movie's called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of Mark Sanders' all-time favorite films, one of the all-time greatest films of all time. If you get a chance, definitely revisit this film, okay? He's Mark. I'm Chris. We're part of the Screen Team. We're going to dive into a deep horror film next with Guy McAndrew. It is called Hereditary. We'll discuss it next right here on the Screen Team.